Good morning. Welcome to Talkline on the MetroNews radio network in and around the great state. Hoppy Kercheval with you. Joe Nelson, our producer. Matt Sunday handling the video stream. You can watch us at wvmetronews.com. Coming up later in the program, Cecil Roberts, President, United Mine Workers Union. He's speaking to the governor's energy summit this morning at Stonewall Resort, and he has a proposal for what he says is a way forward for West Virginia as an energy-producing state, coal and natural gas, in light of the president's climate policies. What is that proposal? We'll find out in 1 hour. But first up this hour, let's get back to the Don Blankenship trial as the federal government continues to present its case. Jeff Jenkins at the courthouse yesterday. He has been there every afternoon. Shauna Johnson there this morning. She'll join us in a little bit. Harvey Payton, who is one of our legal analysts, will join us in a little bit as well. But, Jeff, good morning. Let's start with you and yesterday, the continued testimony of Chris Blanchard, who ran the coal group that oversaw the operation of Upper Big Branch in Raleigh County, and that's where the explosion was that killed 29 miners. What was the focus yesterday with Blanchard's testimony?
Well, the focus, Hop, was that what they're trying to do is trying to show that Massey did discipline employees.
By they, you mean the defense?
Yeah, the
under
defense.
Cross-examination. Okay.
Yes. Did discipline employees for safety problems. So they go down this exhaustive list of about 24 guys that were suspended for a couple of days without pay. Some of them lost their jobs for not roof bolting correctly, for not shoveling around a mine belt, these things that they were cited for. So they're cited for these things by inspectors, and they go back and say, why didn't you do your job? And because you didn't, then this is the action we're taking against you. And this was, most of these were in the summer, fall time period of 2009, which would be, inside a year from when UBB happened in April 2010. Mm-hmm. So what they're trying to do there is to show that, that when safety problems occurred, that they took action, and that would be opposite of what the prosecution claims, that Don Blankenship, skirted mine safety laws in favor of production, and it really wasn't like that. Now, and Harvey will probably speak to this, what was interesting is that the line of questioning from Bill Taylor, who is the lead defense attorney, some leading questions to Chris Blanchard saying, coal miners are basically independent thinkers, right? Yes, sir. They don't always follow rules, right? No, sir. They don't, they think sometimes they can do things better than their boss would tell them to do, right? Yes, sir. Why do they do that? I'm not sure, sir. I mean, so he kind of creates this thing that maybe it's the miners who, kind of blaming the miners for some of this, which is kind of an interesting.
It is. Yeah. And we'll ask Harvey about that, because I know Harvey Payton had some observations about that, because that is a potentially dangerous tack, because on one hand, the defense obviously wants to continue to suggest that the supervisors were responsive to safety issues at the mine, and suggesting that there were instances where the miners themselves ignored safety standards or took the safety responsible for safety upon themselves, or didn't follow the directives for safety. But in doing that, one of two things, Jeff, and again, we'll ask Harvey about that. One is that the jury could think, oh, okay, some of the miners screwed up the safety issue. Or you could say, wait a minute, are you blaming the miners who got killed at UBB for the explosion? So I think that's a little bit of a dangerous tack for the defense.
We'll see what, and then, Hoppy, a guy who's been on the stand now for more than 17 hours, you just wonder when the jury just kind of gets tired of it. And just,
tired of hearing from him.
Just tired of hearing from him. And when it's, when it's kind of a diminishing return type of thing, which kind of Harvey's referred to also. They last Friday, before court ended last Friday, they promised that they wanted Blanchard to take a look at a video over the weekend of this safety meeting that happened at Scott High School for some of the Massey leaders, before UBB, obviously, about this new safety effort that they were going to implement, and so that hasn't been presented yet. So I think that probably needs to be presented if the defense is going to do that, and then Blanchard will be on redirect testimony for it's going to be hours, I would think, because he's been on this cross-examination for hours.
Jeff Jenkins is with us. Jeff, let me go to your story at wvmetronews.com. Over and over again, Taylor, defense attorney, asked Chris Blanchard, if he'd ever concluded, based on the handwritten notes from Blankenship on documents, that compliance with federal and state regulations was optional. No, sir, Blanchard answered each time. Do you agree that it's not acceptable business practice to ignore safety in a coal mine, asked Taylor. I would agree, Blanchard testified. He could point to no instances in the documents that are now considered evidence where Blankenship told him to violate regulations from the Mine Safety and Health Administration. Taylor asked later, the fact that a coal mine gets citations does not mean there's a conspiracy. That's correct, Blanchard said. All mines get citations, Taylor said. That's correct. So, and Jeff, what continues to stand out to me, this is a prosecution witness. The last couple of days under cross-examination, Blanchard has sounded like a defense witness.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to be a prosecution witness. I mean, he made that clear.
Well, that's evident.
Yeah, he made that clear early that he was basically forced. He wasn't, from the beginning, he says, I didn't do anything wrong. And they threatened prosecution of him. And, when he agreed to this deal with the federal prosecutors that he would testify against them under this limited immunity type thing, and he wouldn't be charged unless he perjured himself. It was 2 days later they indicted Blankenship.
Right.
So that's how key they thought this was, obviously, of getting him to testify. So we'll see where they go on redirect. If they attack him, if they, like what Tom Payton was talking about yesterday. I mean, I think I would think that it's going to be long and.
Yeah, there's a lot of material to go over. I just, again, it is hard to know because you don't know what's going to follow, and it's a little bit unfair. Well, it's extremely unfair to judge where things are at any given point in the trial because you don't know what the jury is taking under consideration. You don't know what resonates with the jury. You can't tell just by looking at them, even though you're there every day. But it feels to me like that the prosecution is losing some ground here as long as Blanchard continues under this cross-examination saying the kinds of things he's saying.
Yeah. And, the point's just made over and over and over again, and the defense is just, they're stretching it out and they're doing what defense people do. They kind of broaden the whole thing. Mm-hmm. You broaden it, bring more people. You make the jury that starts then thinking about other things, and and
you talk about what safety steps were taken there, and the kinds of things you do, and you go on, and wow.
Here's the thing what I've sensed from this, Hoppy, is the prosecution's trying to say there weren't enough workers at UBB to make it safe, and the reason there weren't enough workers is because Don Blankenship didn't want a lot of workers.
Was overly concerned about profits over.
Right. Yeah, and that's what they're trying to do. And the defense is saying, hey, listen, I mean, there are these programs here, and the miners didn't follow, the programs, and there were programs here to be done, and they were dealt with when they didn't follow the program. So, the safety things were there, and still there's not. And with Blanchard, who's the closest to Blankenship so far, I mean, there hasn't been that. He again, his testimony was, I did not conspire. He did not conspire with me to break safety laws, those type of things.
Answering a question from the defense, Blanchard said he was under pressure from above, meaning from Blankenship, his bosses, to explain violations and correct them. They wanted hazards eliminated and violations reduced, he testified. Wow, if you're the prosecution, get him off the stand. I mean, the guy is really, I think, helping the defense significantly. Yeah. In this case, we'll see maybe they can get something done under redirect with him.
Well, there's no recross in any of this either.
Right, so they're going to get one more shot at him.
Yeah.
And then you can't recross, but you do get a redirect.
Yeah, and I think this is just, for those who are covering the trial. I mean, the prosecution said last week they hope to rest early this week. Well, I don't think that's happening now. Yeah. I mean, they at least have two more witnesses, including Ross, the guy who authored the memo about safety, which might be their star witness.
Right.
And so he's, word is he's been hanging around the courthouse, and he's been, he's
waiting.
He's there waiting to testify. So you think that he might be it. There might be another witness before him.
And then that would be, they would finish with their whistleblower.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right, Jeff Jenkins, and the story's posted at wvmetronews.com, written by Jeff Jenkins, Shauna Johnson, also covering the trial, and she'll check in with us in a little bit. But more there at wvmetronews.com. Thanks, Jeff. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And again, it's hard to say if you're not there taking it all in, every minute of testimony, but it's just interesting the way that the trial has turned on this witness who is a prosecution witness. However, there is redirect coming up, and we'll see if the prosecution can regain its footing with Chris Blanchard continuing on the stand. Coming up, Harvey Payton with his analysis and more. Talkline continues after this.
Constantly checking your business checking? Switching to an MVB Bank Foundation business checking account makes your cash management easier with no minimum balance, no monthly service fees, up to 500 free transactions per month, and access to MVB where you work. Visit MVBbanking.com to see how MVB Bank helps you build a foundation for your business. MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC. Transactions are checks paid and deposited and ACH debits. $50 minimum deposit to open, 20 cents for each transaction over 500.
Hello?
Susan, I need your help.
Sure, what's up?
I need a contractor, and I don't know how to find a good one.
Oh, that's easy. Go to the Home Builders Association of West Virginia. They have a list of all kinds of contractors.
How do I know if they're good? I don't want just anybody.
Well, do your homework. Are they licensed and insured? Check their references and look at what they've done. Do people like them? And most of all, be sure to get a clear written contract.
Okay, where do I find this association?
Go to hbawv.org.
hbawv.org.
That's it.
Your dreams built by the best. Contact the Home Builders Association of West Virginia for a list of professionals in your area. Go to hbawv.org today. This message brought to you by our marketing partners. Lowe's of North Central West Virginia, Brick Street, 84 Lumber, Federal Home Loan Bank of Pittsburgh, ProBuild, SJ Needhawk, Valcon, Wincor, and West Virginia Housing Development Fund. The Home Builders Association of West Virginia. Go to hbawv.org today.
The West Virginia Mountaineers return to action Thursday night, October 29th in Texas. Join the MetroNews Game Day crew as they cover WVU's primetime matchup with the TCU Horned Frogs. Pre-game coverage starts at 4:30 with the Jeep Gold and Blue Countdown, followed by the Sports Brunch. Game line kicks off at 7:30. At 10:30, post-game analysis begins on the Gold and Blue Wrap-Up, presented by the West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association, followed by the Point After. Don't miss game day coverage at its best here on MetroNews.
This is Talkline on Metro News. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
When we made the Jeep Cherokee, we didn't stop at a stunning interior, or at advanced technologies, or stop at that gas station, or from going over bumps, or rocks, or through rivers. Let's just say we couldn't stop ourselves. One drive and you'll discover why the Jeep brand continues to be the best-selling SUV brand. Join us now during the Jeep Drive and Discover event.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
Almost there. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Gosh, cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest, because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
It's a lot easier when you have it on before you get pulled over. Click it or ticket.
Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank, member FDIC. Please welcome Harvey Payton, Nitro attorney and one of our legal advisors for the Blankenship trial. Harvey, good morning. You were there yesterday afternoon. More cross-examination of Chris Blanchard, who ran the coal group that oversaw UBB. At times, are you wondering, is this guy a witness for the prosecution? It seems to me like he's helping the defense a lot.
Well, he's helping the defense's strategy a lot. This gentleman, he is a step below, 2 steps below the level of Don Blankenship that was the corporate hierarchy. And the government, I believe, felt compelled to put him on the stand because he's named in the indictment as an unindicted co-conspirator. And the government got some essential admissions from this witness last Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is he's now been on the stand on cross-examination for about 12 hours, and he's obviously not a friendly witness to the government. He was threatened with prosecution in this case, persists that he did nothing wrong, and actually the defense is presenting Don Blankenship's account of this case without actually having to call Mr. Blankenship to the stand. They're using Chris Blanchard as an alter ego.
Yeah.
I mean, he's saying the things that Blankenship would say were he put on the stand.
What do you think? How do you think it resonates with the jury when there are questions such as I asked Jeff Jenkins earlier, do you agree there's not acceptable business practice to ignore safety in the mine? I would agree. Can you point to any instance?
Well, he would agree, but
okay, but can you point to any instance where Blankenship told you to violate mine safety? No. I mean, doesn't that have any impact on the jury?
Well, it will have some impact, but the proof's in the pudding. The facts often say things much more loudly than a person can say themselves. I mean,
Okay.
if indeed the government can get back to their case, the core of their case, which is you can say a lot of things at the corporate level, but if there is an understanding, spoken or unspoken, written or unwritten, between individuals to simply defy that policy
Okay.
and to run production at the cost of everything else, then the jury's going to believe that. I mean, it certainly isn't helpful to the government, but at the same time, it's self-serving. Mr. Blankenship doesn't believe he did anything wrong. He entered a plea of not guilty and is standing trial. This fellow says, I didn't do anything wrong.
Okay.
But whether they did or not is the ultimate issue.
All right, I'll get back to that in a second. But I want to go to one line of questioning that stood out to you where the defense got into what you say was dangerous ground when Blanchard would ask a series of questions. Paraphrasing here, isn't it true that coal miners sometimes don't do what they're supposed to? Isn't it true that coal miners sometimes don't do what you tell them to? Isn't it true that coal miners sometimes think they know more about mining coal than you do? What was the point of that line of questioning, and what was the impact of it, and why was it dangerous ground, in your opinion, for the defense?
Well, it's not an uncommon tactic, for instance, in civil cases, to blame the worker with the understanding that, quote, everyone's responsible for safety. The problem is, of course, if everyone's responsible, no one's responsible. But it's another attempt, or was another attempt by the defense to tamp this safety issue at UBB down to a level way, way below Don Blankenship, to a level that he couldn't control. It's, quote, it's blame the miner. I mean, the problem in this case was the defense asking those questions, and they got away from them. They asked about 6 questions, 8 questions in that regard, and then dropped it.
Why was it risky? Why is that risky in your opinion? Because now you could perceive this as you're blaming the miners for blowing up UBB?
Sure. Well, blaming the miners for violations, that something that was beyond the control. Again, in the background of this case, of course, you've got 29 people who are dead, and
right.
So you can't even have a hint in your defense of blaming those people for their own demise.
Right.
I just think that's dangerous. There was a marked change in affect of most everybody in the courtroom, not necessarily verbally, but you can see people looking around, and it's a hard thing to say in a case where, at the end of the day, although that's not the subject of the trial, there are 29 men who were killed and another man who's totally disabled for life.
Sure.
I thought it was a dangerous place to go.
Harvey Payton's with us, who's serving as a legal advisor on this Blankenship trial. So, Harvey, redirect by the prosecution coming up. They need to regain their footing with Blanchard. What do they do?
Well, I mean, they have to get back to their case. Since the very beginning, the strategy clearly laid out by the defense is to try and contextualize the memoranda and conversations that the government says are consistent with guilt by burying those in a whole pile of corporate memoranda and conversations that look, this is just a big corporation, and we were doing all these things.
So what do the federal prosecutors do?
Well, they're going to have to get back, I think, to their best hold, which is chronic understaffing. I mean, a third of the miners surveyed said they didn't have enough people to do their job safely. There were constant calls for following the, quote, plan, which equals 1 man-hour of work with 2 feet of coal cut from the face, constant requests for production. There were some reductions in force at the mine after some violations were cured. And, I mean, the government has their witness, Mr. Ross, who's going to testify today or tomorrow that he directly told Mr. Blankenship, if you don't staff this mine adequately, something very bad is going to happen.
So the prosecution has to get back to the established facts that they have already established in this case, run it through Blanchard, and then establish Blanchard as a lackey for Blankenship.
Right. I mean, as another change, obviously the level of presidents of the coal groups run by Massey is not really high on the feeding chain. We've had 2 testify, one Mr. Hugert, who's in prison, who admitted on the stand that he was otherwise a thief and a drug addict, and then this gentleman who is, you heard the tapes of his responses to Mr. Blankenship. It was like some child being lectured by a Dutch uncle. He's a yes man. So these people at this presidential level are not setting policy. They're in charge of production. So that link's pretty fairly made, I think.
All right, 20 seconds. Does a prosecution need a big witness? Do they need Ross to be the whistleblower?
Yeah, I think they need to. They needed to get some pop back in this case and to bring it out from under the pile of minutia that the defense has done a really good job of burying it in.
Got it. Harvey Payton, who is serving as one of our legal advisors, along with his son Tom, of this trial of Don Blankenship. More at our website at wvmetronews.com. Harvey's headed back down there today, so monitor our coverage with Jeff Jenkins, Shauna Johnson, and Harvey and Tom Payton. Thank you, Harvey. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Hoppy. Take care.
All right, man. Okay, so there's where things stand. Redirect of Blanchard today. This is Talkline on Metro News, the voice of West Virginia. 10:30, let's get a news update. Check in with the Metro News Radio Network and find out what's happening statewide this hour, all across the great state of West Virginia.
West Virginia Metro News, I'm Jeff Jenkins. West Virginia American Water Company serves more customers in West Virginia than any other water company. And today, an evidentiary hearing begins before the State Public Service Commission on that company's request for a 28% increase in its rates. West Virginia American spokesperson Laura Jordan.
The requested increase is to cover the $105 million worth of system improvements that we've already made at the time that the case was filed, in addition to another $98 million that we plan to make through the beginning of 2017.
And the hearing expected to last several days in Charleston. The Randolph County Coal Company has warned its workers of possible layoffs in 60 days. Approximately 170 workers received notice Monday from the Carter Row Coal Company, a subsidiary of United Coal Company. It announced its intentions to close that prep plant in Randolph County. More at wvmetronews.com. Meanwhile, it looks like Blackhawk Mining will be hiring soon in connection with the Patriot operations that it has purchased through bankruptcy. Blackhawk spokesperson Jesse Parrish.
In anticipation of closing the transaction in the next 2 days, we've begun our preparations of hiring folks so we can effectuate an efficient transition so the mines can stay running as quickly as absolutely possible.
Read more at wvmetronews.com. You're listening to Metro News. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
There are things that make our lives easier.
You know, locking shoelaces, pizza scissors, remote control mops, one-hand bottle cap openers, and the Know Before You Go driving app.
It's free travel information on West Virginia highways, traffic congestion, work zones, road conditions, information that can make your travel easier. Log on to WV511.org or download the WV511 Drive Safe app.
Know Before You Go. It'll make your life easier.
It's good getting harder to make ends meet, and when you can't keep food on the table, it's pretty devastating. There is assistance, but applications can be confusing. Catholic Charities West Virginia is making it easier by helping families learn about and enroll in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, so they can get the healthy foods they need. Call 844-292-3217 to learn more, because if one person is going hungry, that's one too many. Catholic Charities West Virginia is an equal opportunity employer and service provider, funded in part by USDA and the Walmart Foundation.
The Governor's Energy Summit is underway this morning at Stonewall Resort in Lewis County. The one-day event will include presentations from many speakers, including the governor and United Mine Workers Union President Cecil Roberts. State Lottery Commission meets next hour, which will be the last meeting for longtime Director John Musgrave. He announced his retirement earlier this month. A tractor-trailer crash on Interstate 64 in Huntington will probably keep westbound traffic moving slow for a couple more hours. The wreck took place early this morning near the Hal Greer Boulevard exit. From the Metro News Anchor Desk, I'm Jeff Jenkins.
Talkline on MetroNews. So traffic continues to move slow on I-64 West at Hal Greer Boulevard near Huntington because of an accident there. Tractor-trailer accident, so traffic moving slowly still. I-64 West at Hal Greer Boulevard at Huntington. Shauna Johnson at the Blankenship trial. Shauna, we just finished talking with Jeff and Harvey Payton about the Blanchard testimony under cross-examination. Blanchard still on the stand? What's going on?
He is still on the stand, and cross-examination continues this morning. He's now nearing hour number 19. Blanchard, the former Performance Coal president. This morning, he's been working through a list of about 19 defense documents, including citations, looking at anything from citations for lunch wrappers left around or a grill outside of the mine. After each of these, defense attorney Bill Taylor is asking the same question. Was this the result of a conspiracy between you and Mr. Blankenship to willfully violate mine safety regulations? His answer is always no, sir. So really a continuation of probably what Jeff and Harvey talked about from Monday afternoon.
So again, the defense is pointing out safety violations that occurred, in some cases very, very minor, and just saying, was this a conspiracy? No. Was this a conspiracy? No.
No. Was this a conspiracy? No. And a topic that did come up this morning a little bit was about the ventilation plan at Upper Big Branch. Blanchard talked about a meeting that UBB officials had had with MSHA in March of 2010, and there was a disagreement about how the mine was being ventilated.
Right.
It was the next day when MSHA showed up and wrote 17 citations for other violations. Blanchard testified that what they thought was happening with the air at UBB was wrong. What MSHA thought was happening with the air was wrong. And he told the jury because they could not cite the mine for those air ventilation problems, they found 17 other things to cite the mine for. Now, we know Judge Irene Berger has already said the defense cannot float a theory that they have, an argument they want to make, that the MSHA ventilation plan for UBB was improper and because of that did not have to be followed. The judge has ruled on a couple of motions to keep that argument out. So defense attorney Bill Taylor had to tread carefully, but he was able to bring into testimony today some statements about disagreements about the ventilation plan at UBB.
Boy, look, that the defense is, I think, doing a really good job here, Sean, of just, okay, they can't float that theory that about MSHA and ventilation, but they just get something in there, but raising just a question about the Mine Safety Health Administration. They just find a way to get it in.
Chris Blanchard did say, we disagree about what needed to be done. That was a quote on ventilation at UBB. So even though they can't fully float that idea, it is into it. And we really have no indication of how much longer this cross-examination is going to go.
Well, Shauna Johnson, Metro News at the trial. Thank you, Shauna.
Thank you.
All right. Good job. Blankenship has pretty good lawyers. Not long ago, the American Cancer Society, one of the most respected and influential groups in continuing breast cancer screening, they had more information on the debate, and the American Cancer Society said that women should begin mammograms later and have them less frequently than it had long advocated. So there's been a change. And now the American Cancer Society which has for years taken the most aggressive approach to screening, has issued new guidelines recommending that women with an average risk of breast cancer start having mammograms at 45 and continue once a year until 54, then every other year for as long as they are healthy and likely to live another 10 years. Previously, the society recommended mammograms and clinical breast exams every year, starting at 40. So what are you supposed to do? Dr. Ginger Lane is medical director of the Betty Pushkar Breast Care Center at WVU and joins us on MetroNews Talkline. Dr. Lane, good morning. Mammogram information, it seems to me, is oftentimes confusing and conflicting. What are women in West Virginia supposed to do?
I agree with all the headlines. It is very confusing. I still agree with the American College of Radiology guidelines. I think there is clear scientific evidence that shows that women gain the greatest benefit from screening mammography every year beginning at age 40. Even the American Cancer Society and the USPSTF agree with this, that the greatest decrease in mortality comes from annual screening beginning at age 40.
Aren't there issues, though, with annual screening? Well, why wouldn't the American Cancer Society, I'm not asking you to speak for them, but why would they say, well, you don't need annual screenings?
So the biggest concerns that the American Cancer Society has come up with is the concern of overdiagnosis of breast cancer, right, as well as false positives. So as far as overdiagnosis is concerned, I don't really think there is any scientific evidence to show that that happens. If somebody is diagnosed with a small invasive breast cancer, we have no scientific evidence to show that that would somehow disappear in some patients. So I really don't think that should be considered as a concern. The other concern that they have is false positives. In other words, you go get your mammogram and something's wrong with the mammogram, so you have to get additional imaging, which is definitely very anxiety-provoking for patients. However, most of those end up being worked out and found to be benign things that do not need biopsies or anything. So I would argue that the stress from needing additional imaging is much less than knowing that, oh my goodness, now I have a breast cancer and I didn't get my mammogram every year. And, you know, if I'd gotten it earlier, maybe I would have found it at a smaller size.
Yeah, and personal story with my wife, I mean, same thing, get a mammogram and they say, you know, we're probably going to call you back. Like, why? What do you mean? Well, we could, and again, it's a false positive, but maybe then it just establishes a baseline, and you go from there. So is it in West Virginia? Are women regularly getting checked? I mean, what advice are they following now? If they're following any advice,
it seems, at least in Morgantown where I practice, most people continue to get annual screening mammograms beginning at age 40. I feel bad because it is very confusing for patients, and if I were a patient, I probably wouldn't know what to do. It's really hard to figure out what to do, but I mean, as far as myself and my family, I will always recommend annual screening beginning at age 40 because, like I said, yes, you may have to get additional imaging at some point, but I find that much less disconcerting than knowing that maybe you've had a breast cancer that you could have found at an earlier stage, a smaller size that was easier to treat.
Mm-hmm. So that's average risk. What about if you're, and how would you, who is in a higher risk category and what should they do?
So about 75% of patients who are diagnosed with cancer every year, breast cancer every year, are actually of average risk. There are only about 25% of breast cancer diagnoses that are higher risk patients. And the higher risk patients are people who have a first-degree relative with a history of breast cancer or have a genetic mutation such as the BRCA gene. And those patients who are at higher risk usually qualify to also get an annual screening MRI. Also, if you have a first-degree relative, like your mom who had breast cancer, you either begin screening at age 40 or 10 years prior to the age at which she was diagnosed. So if your mom was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 40, you would want to start your screening mammograms at 30.
So, and Doctor, not to put you on the spot, but Dr. Ginger Lane is with us, medical director of the Betty Pushkar Breast Care Center at WVU. But again, we end up with this somewhat conflicting advice, is that you say, you follow other professional advice that says annual mammograms starting at 40. The American Cancer Society, which has tremendous credibility, comes out and says, no, start at 45 and continue once a year till 54. So what's a woman to do?
So I agree. It is very confusing. The best thing a woman can do is look up the data, look up the scientific evidence, and make a decision for herself. So the American Cancer Society does recommend them beginning at age 45, but I believe they also said it's kind of optional between 40 and 45. Kind of discuss it with your doctor. But there is clear. It's almost as if they arbitrarily chose the age of 45. There's no scientific basis on it choosing the age of 45. There's clear scientific evidence, multiple randomized controlled studies that show that there is a benefit in decreased mortality from breast cancer by starting annual screening at age 40. As a matter of fact, mammography became pretty widespread around 1990, and since then, the mortality from breast cancer in the U.S. has decreased by a third. So, I mean, I think that speaks for itself. And I worry if we change the guidelines that we will, for the first time in about 5 to 10 years, see an increase in mortality if we switch gears and kind of go back.
So your counsel is you're 40 years old, you're a woman, you haven't been yet, you're average, you don't have a immediate family history, to go get checked now.
Definitely. I believe in annual screening beginning at age 40.
Gotcha. Dr. Ginger Lane, Medical Director of the Betty Pushkar Cancer Care Center at WVU. Dr. Lane, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, good talking to you. So, continued conflicting advice. It was a big story when the American Cancer Society came out and said, well, you can wait till 45. But you still have a lot of cancer doctors who say, no, I would still go at 40. As they always say, talk to your doctor. More to come on Talkline. Stay with us. We'll return.
Have you ever wondered just who are the Friends of Coal? Well, there are 50,000 West Virginia families who support the state's coal industry, and they look a lot like you. Honest, hardworking, good neighbors who want a future for themselves and their state. They're coal miners, housewives, school teachers, mechanics, doctors, college professors, pizza delivery guys, your friends. The Friends of Coal know and understand the importance of the coal industry to our state's economy. They know about the 60,000 jobs the coal industry creates in our state. They know about the $25 billion the industry pumps into our economy. And they know that without coal, our state would face an economic catastrophe. Come to think of it, that sounds like most West Virginians. Let Congress know you are a proud West Virginian, and you are a friend of coal.
Coal is West Virginia.
Thursday nights on MetroNews, it's Mountain East Conference football. This Thursday, the West Virginia Wesleyan Bobcats visit the University of Charleston Golden Eagles, and MetroNews brings you all the action. Join Travis Jones and special guest Carl Lee for the call of the game starting at 7 p.m. Don't miss Division II football at its best as the Golden Eagles take on the Bobcats on Mountain East Conference Thursday night football from MetroNews and WVMetroNews.com.
Imagine a scale and you're trying to balance it. Too much on one side and it sinks, just like our state's economy. When jobs are centered on one or two industries, the balance is off, our economy sinks, and good-paying jobs disappear. West Virginia needs a variety of industries, including fossil fuels, small business, and high-tech jobs to bring balance. The High Technology Foundation works to bring those high-tech jobs here. Ask your legislator if they're helping the High Technology Foundation bring balance to our economy. From the West Virginia High Technology Foundation.
Beckley, West Virginia is in the top 10. Unfortunately, it's in the top 10 for identity theft. When someone steals your identity, they're not only able to open accounts or credit cards to go on a spending spree, they can also write bad checks, establish utilities, even file for bankruptcy in your name. Hamilton, Burgess, Young & Pollard know identity theft, and they're ready to help you fight to clear your name. With offices in Princeton and Fayetteville, Hamilton, Burgess, Young & Pollard online at hamiltonburgess.com.
You're listening to Talkline on MetroNews. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
When we made the Jeep Cherokee, we didn't stop at a stunning interior, or at advanced technologies, or stop at that gas station, or from going over bumps, or rocks, or through rivers. Let's just say we couldn't stop ourselves. One drive and you'll discover why the Jeep brand continues to be the best-selling SUV brand. Join us now during the Jeep Drive and Discover event.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
Almost there. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
It's a lot easier when you have it on before you get pulled over. Click it or ticket.
Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank, member FDIC. So in Pemberton, Washington, there's a high school football coach there. Pemberton football coach Joe Kennedy leads his kids in a prayer after games, in trouble for it. What's the story? How's this going to shake out? Let's talk to Tanya J. Powers, Fox News Radio, following the story. Tanya, good morning. What's the rest of this story and what's happening now?
Well, the rest of the story is Coach Joe Kennedy, as you mentioned, was facing, losing his job because he was told by the school district there in Washington State to stop praying on the 50-yard line after the football games. He's been doing this since 2008. This is not a new thing. But recently, apparently, the school district was worried about, they fearful they might become the target of a lawsuit over it, so they told him to stop, and that he couldn't do anything religious in front of the students, like, take a knee or bow his head or anything like that. He now says he's going to sue them over it because he doesn't feel they should be allowed to do this or fire him because of the fact that he's doing this. And by the way, the students that go out, the players that go out to pray with him at the midfield point after the game, he said, look, they aren't coerced to go. Matter of fact, they asked him early on when he started doing this, is it okay if we go pray with you? And he said, ironically, yeah, it's a free country. Do what if you want to. Go ahead. And even there were even players from opposing teams who would come and pray with them midfield when the game was over. So this is not a complaint that has launched this. Apparently, it was a compliment that was said about the coach to someone in the school district there and one of the leaders, I guess, and. That's how this all started.
Yeah, it would seem to me, Tanya, that I'm not a lawyer, but it would seem to me that the issue is whether the prayer is compulsory or whether if a student didn't participate, then if he was, treated differently or something like that. But if it's strictly voluntary or he just does it himself and others join around, it would seem like it would be acceptable. That's a non-legal opinion, but.
Well, yeah, and I think most of the folks have made exactly the same point that you've made. His attorney makes that same point, and he also goes one step further and says, look, if you're going to keep him from even bowing his head on the school campus, then you're going to have to now reevaluate every person that works for the school district as far as what religious things they might be doing or outfits they might wear or jewelry or anything else. I mean, this could go that far.
Yeah. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News Radio, thank you very much. Sorry you had to wait. Appreciate you giving us details on the story. So these kinds of cases come up all the time. And I think it's an issue of, and there is a historic separation between church and state, and school is a secular activity, and the associated events are secular in nature. In other words, you can't proselytize a particular religion. However, I would think that if a coach or a student And I'm thinking about the graduation prayer thing too, but if after the game you take a knee and it's completely voluntary and the students can participate if they want, they don't have to participate. If they don't participate, they are not treated in a different way, it would seem that would pass legal and constitutional muster. But you can understand, too, a little bit of the school district, because we live in a litigious society, that they just don't want to get sued. And that is a lot of what happens these days, is you get a lot of actions like this because school districts and everybody else, they just don't want to end up in court over this stuff. I would think there is a way forward on this without making a federal case out of it that could satisfy those who wish to pray and those who don't wish to pray, and we can all get along. All right, we'll be back. Stay with us.
Wait, this can't be right. If you bank with MVB, they pay you to use your debit card? Who approved this?
That's right. With MVB's checking with cash back, we pay you to use your debit card. What's more, we give you 2% cash back on purchases when qualifications are met. Open an account online today at mvbbanking.com or visit one of our convenient local branches. MVB, your financial life made easy. Member FDIC.
True to its motto, wild and wonderful, West Virginia is the third most forested state in the country for landmass and has 7 million more forested acres now than 100 years ago. The mountain state is abundantly blessed with valuable renewable forest resources, which naturally regenerate for future generations. Forestry is the basis for over 5,000 separate wood and paper products, creating millions of dollars in state revenue from business income and property taxes. A message from the West Virginia Forestry Association, WVFA.org.
Trading in your business fleet or personal vehicle for a new one? Donate your used vehicle to Good News Mountaineer Garage and get the best tax deduction possible and the satisfaction of knowing your donation changed the life of someone in need. Good News Mountaineer Garage repairs donated vehicles and provides them to qualified West Virginia families, giving them access to employment, safe, affordable housing, healthcare, and other vital necessities, and putting them on the road to economic independence. Call 1-866-GIVE-CAR today for Good News Mountaineer Garage. 866-GIVE-CAR.
Every year, the Museum of Radio and Technology in Huntington adds more people to its Broadcasters Hall of Fame. The voices you grew up with, the faces you know, and the men and women behind the scenes are all represented in the Hall of Fame. And this Saturday at 6 p.m., the MetroNews Radio Network presents the 2015 Broadcast Hall of Fame ceremony live from the Radio Museum. Listen along with us as we honor the people who bring you radio and TV in West Virginia. Halloween night at 6 p.m. Join us.
This is Talkline on MetroNews. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
When we made the Jeep Cherokee, we didn't stop at a stunning interior, or at advanced technologies, or stop at that gas station, or from going over bumps, or rocks, or through rivers. Let's just say we couldn't stop ourselves. One drive and you'll discover why the Jeep brand continues to be the best-selling SUV brand. Join us now during the Jeep Drive and Discover event.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
Almost there. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
It's a lot easier when you have it on before you get pulled over. Click it or ticket.
Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank member, FDIC. You can still pick up your fall foliage guide. A little bit of time remaining. Call 1-800-CALL-WVA, 1-800-CALL-WVA, or stop by 90 McCorkle Avenue, Southwest in South Charleston, or visit one of West Virginia's welcome centers. And don't forget to share your fall photos. I know we're past peak, in my opinion. There might be some peaks out there, but there's still some beautiful contrasts that exist. The golds, the yellows, the reds, the oranges. Take a picture and post on Facebook, Twitter, and or Instagram using the hashtag #GoToWV and hashtag fall in WV. The head of the EPA told Congress Tuesday that her agency's bust of German automaker Volkswagen and other high-profile cases shows, quote, America still needs an environmental watchdog with grit and teeth. Laws talk the talk, but enforcement walks the walk, EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy wrote in an op-ed published Tuesday in the Hill newspaper. And granted, Volkswagen should have been busted for violating, for fraud, for committing fraud. No question about that. But it was WVU, researchers there, who got the work done. But nevertheless, but when McCarthy says laws talk the talk, but enforcement walks the walk, then why are we following the law? Why isn't the EPA following the law? Why is the EPA creating its own laws? For example, the Clean Power Plan, which is not, you would think, this Clean Power Plan, which limits carbon emissions at utilities across the country, at electricity power plants. You would think that something that massive would, in fact, be a law that would be approved by the United States Congress, by the people's representatives, and signed by the president. It is not. It is a creation of a federal agency with an intent to dramatically limit carbon emissions and to put a foot on the throat of coal, which it is doing pretty successfully. Coming up in 6 minutes, United Mine Workers President Cecil Roberts, and he says, enough, Hoppy, with the complaining. He's got a way forward through all this. What is it? Well, he pitched it this morning at the governor's Energy Summit, and he'll talk about it in 6 minutes. Cecil Roberts joins us after the top of the hour break. This is Talkline on Metro News. Metro News is the voice of West Virginia. Welcome back. Hour number 2 of Talkline on the Metro News Radio Network in and around the great state of West Virginia. Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank member, FDIC. Please welcome the president of the United Mine Workers Union, Cecil Roberts. Cecil, good morning. How are you?
How's the nation's number one radio personality doing this morning?
I don't know how Rush Limbaugh's doing, but I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking.
Rush Limbaugh is not number one in the state of West Virginia, and you and I both know that.
How are you, Cecil? How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm fine. Better than I deserve. Cecil, you made a presentation this morning to the West Virginia National to the Governor's Energy Summit. The Governor's Energy Summit this morning, and you made a proposal which I want to get to. I've read your speech, and I want to get into what you put forward. It's interesting and worthy of discussion, but I want to do something first because you said the following: the coal market is growing worse by the day, and we're seeing a flood of ever more restrictive regulations by a federal government that is placing the burden of slowing climate change squarely on the backs of these workers, their families, their communities. If the recent EPA regulations, including the Clean Power Plan, hold up in court, the EPA says that Appalachian coal production for power generation will be reduced by 79 million tons by 2030, which is about two-thirds less than Appalachian steam coal production was in 2012. So we agree universally, we agree completely that the policies of this administration are contributing mightily to the struggles of the coal industry, and in and of themselves will have negligible, if any, impact on the temperature of the globe. You and I agree completely on that, correct?
And by the way, that's a consistent position that I've had for several years now, and it's stated not only on your program, but on national media outlets such as MSNBC, which not many people get the opportunity to say on MSNBC.
Yeah. Okay. So we're on the same place on that. But you went on to say, okay, we've established that. But you went on to say, what I'm going to suggest to you is that West Virginia should lay the groundwork to become the first state to construct new baseload electricity generation co-fired by abundant coal and natural gas. So tell us more.
Well, I said a couple of things. First of all, on Friday, we joined in the litigation opposing the administration's Clean Power Plan. So we're in concert with the states and certain coal companies and others across the United States. And I went on to say, I think we'll probably win this eventually. The problem with winning it is it's going to take a while. What's available to us currently, I urge the state to take advantage of the 2-year extension we can avail ourselves of under the Clean Power Plant rule as proposed by the EPA, which buys us time for the litigation to make its way through the courts. The other thing I urge is not to just say no to this. The reason for that is the most recent version of this Clean Power Plan allows the federal government to force upon the state a federal plan, implementation plan, which I don't think we want any part of either. So just saying no gets us something we really don't want is the point. The other thing is we should prepare ourselves going forward over the next, we have to look down the road here for the next 40 years, not the next 40 days or 40 months, and to say what we need to do in the state to be able to provide jobs to coal miners and have a robust coal industry in the state of West Virginia. We've got to stop thinking we can change federal policy to the degree that satisfies us. We need to act on our own here, and we can. We have some things going for us in the state. We have an abundance of both natural gas and coal. We have a law that was passed in 85. We have a law that was passed much more recently. I think it's 2009. We should build and bond. Bonding authority, by the way, exists pursuant to the 85 legislation to build coal-fired power plants, and we could either build coal-fired power plants and utilize carbon capture and sequestration. We could build coal-fired power plants to also utilize as natural gas. What we have to do is anticipate what's going to happen over the next 40 years. And what I urge folks to do that were in the audience this morning is to put yourself in the place of a CEO of a utility company. Right now, when those kinds of decisions are being made to replace generation that has become older, plants are being closed, what kind of generation are you going to have in the future? And they're scared to death to build a coal-fired power plant because you're talking about $2 billion to construct a coal-fired power plant and about $750 to $800 million for a gas plant. What that tells me is we're not going to have any new coal-fired power plants regardless of who's in the White House and regardless of what happens with this clean power plant. What we need to do is take the initiative here and say we do want a robust coal industry in the state of West Virginia, and we can have it if we all work together. It's going to take the politicians, the legislature, it's going to take the coal companies, and most of all, probably the people of West Virginia and the utilities to work together here to see that we have that. And we don't have to put all of our chips on who's going to be president this year. When a chairman of the board or CEO of utility companies make these decisions, they're not worried about who the president's going to be next week or next year. They're thinking, well, what am I going to be facing here over the next 40 years? Because when you make a $2 billion investment, it's going to take you 40 years to get the benefits of that investment back for the people who pay who pay you, right? So we should take the initiative here to say we're going to have a robust coal industry in the state of West Virginia. We don't care who the president is or who's running the EPA. We're going to see that our people work and we have jobs. We'll have jobs constructing power plants. We have jobs mining coal. We have jobs at the utilities. And no state needs these jobs more than we do. And I think we have the technology to do this. I think we have the people to do this, and we have the energy to do this.
Okay. I appreciate the fact that you're trying to find a way forward and trying to think outside the box. I think, though, that your proposal prompts a lot of questions. One is, how could we expect the state of West Virginia to be successful in the utility and the power generation business and do it better or more efficiently than the utilities themselves if they don't want to do the very thing that you're talking about we should do?
We wouldn't be in the business ourselves. This would be a public-private venture. Here's what you have to ask yourself, Poppy. Why is it that we cannot expect new coal-fired power plant generation to be constructed? There's a couple of obstacles here, right?
Well, the carbon rules. Nobody can meet the carbon.
The major one you've identified, and that is federal regulations with respect to the utilization of coal. The second one is the cost facing a utility. If we can say let me take an example here, and I know, look, people can shoot this full of holes, but we need to figure out a way forward here.
That's fine.
We're just have to face the reality here that this is getting worse. The chart that I used today showed by 2040, I think there's 400 million tons of coal that we're now utilizing in this country will not be utilized by 2040, which means there's no future whatsoever when we get to 2040 for coal, no matter where you live, whether it's West Virginia or if the Powder River Basin, quite frankly, it's all gone. And I think that's a tragedy for people who are in this business. But the thing we need to do here is say to AEP, for example, look, the state of West Virginia, the people of West Virginia are going to minimize your risk here.
Okay.
You're going to have a power plant that will meet any standards that any president or any EPA comes along with here. So you'll be able to get your investment back. You'll be able to provide cheap, reliable electricity to the people of West Virginia and, quite frankly, out of the state of West Virginia over the next 40 years, and this is what this will do for you.
And, okay, so a public-private partnership, I get that. And, again, I don't want to shoot it down, but I want to raise obvious questions. But the other one is that this appears to be dependent upon the successful use of carbon sequestration, which commercially doesn't work yet. I mean, they tried it here in West Virginia with one of the utilities. They gave it up. They're building a pilot plant somewhere down south. It is way over. Mississippi,
and it's really gone way
over cost.
That's about $6 billion right now.
So how do we do? And so the technology is still problematic. So what's your solution?
There's two suggestions we make here. You could have a coal-fired power plant, and also half of that electricity generated by natural gas, which we think would meet even today's EPA standards if you build a plant along those lines. We also suggest in there, obviously, that we explore carbon capture and sequestration technology. Quite frankly, there's not enough of an investment across this country with respect to that. Not enough work being done on this. When the president ran the first time, and I've said this in the past, he alluded to the fact that he felt that we could develop the technology to use coal cleanly in this country. The statement he made down in, as I've told you in the past, 20 feet from him, when he made the statement in a large crowd in Lebanon High School in Southwest Virginia, in the heart of coal fields, he said, if we can put a man on the moon, surely we can figure out how to burn coal cleanly and utilize this resource that we have. I agreed with that, Barack Obama. And we obviously have not put the kind of investment that we'd like to have seen forward under this administration. Quite frankly, we're starting to rely very, very heavily on natural gas because there's an abundance of it.
Sure.
And it's cheap. It's down to $2 for a million BTUs, which is about as cheap as I've ever seen it.
Yeah. It's Cecil Roberts is with us, president of the United Mine Workers Union. So what do you need here? For this to happen, you need, and you were speaking with key players in West Virginia today, you need buy-in from the state, from the political leaders to make the investment because times are tight right now in West Virginia, so they got to come up with the bonding. They have the bonding authority, but they got to sell the bonds, raise the money to go this route.
That would be the next step in this. What we need is what we tried to trigger today, Hoppy, is A, we got to face some realization of where we are right now, and B, we've got to figure out, well, what is the next step forward? Does anybody have? If somebody's got a better idea, hey, scrap mine, let's go with it. But let's come up with some ideas here to try to preserve a coal industry in the state of West Virginia. You know, my family's been involved in coal mining since about 1912 in the state. I'd hate to think that the generation that we see now is going to be it. I don't want that, obviously, to be my legacy or anybody else's. We have an abundant resource, and we need to figure out how to use it. And we ought to be putting all of our minds and all of our efforts together, whether we're a politician or a union leader or a coal company CEO or a utility CEO or a radio host who's got a lot of power and influence in the state of West Virginia. And obviously, I'm talking about you, Hoppy, to start a dialogue here as opposed to just saying we're angry, which, I don't know if anybody's made a more dramatic statement than I made on your program a couple of years ago about how we feel about this. And I've continue to do that, but that's not getting us anywhere, quite frankly. What we need is we got all these folks laid off, looking for jobs in the state, can't find a job, companies going bankrupt, price of coal dropping like a rock. I saw a story yesterday that the publicly traded coal companies in this nation have lost 91% of their value since April of 2011. That's almost to the point of being unbelievable.
Yeah, that is. And yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate the fact that people are looking for a way forward to still utilize coal. I'm still infuriated by the rule. It's hard for me to get past the fact that the Clean Power Plan is, in my opinion, illegal attempt by the EPA to shut down the coal industry. And
well, that's what the suit basically says. Yeah. And we agree with that, and we think we're going to win. The problem we have is an obvious one. As this makes its way through the litigation process, it'll end up, in our opinion, and most lawyers and experts tell me this, at the Supreme Court of the United States about 2 years from now. And the problem we have is this, even though it's being challenged and even though it just was published in the National Register, what's happened here, the effects of this rule have been in place because utilities have said,
sure,
we're not going to run this kind of risk. We're not going to make this kind of investment in coal. We're not building another coal-fired power plant because somebody's going to come along here in 5 years and tell us to shut it down, and we're just not doing this.
Right.
So therefore, we've got to figure out a way here to minimize risk. We might win this in a couple of years, but what are we going to do between now? How many more power plants are going to close between now and the time the Supreme Court may very well say we're right? And heaven forbid if they say we're wrong. And don't forget, this Supreme Court said that the EPA had the authority to regulate greenhouse gases, which I was quite frankly shocked by.
Yeah.
But they did, and it was this Supreme Court that did that.
Well, I understand. It'd be more fun if you'd chain yourself to Gina McCarthy's office door, but...
Well, you know what? I was close to doing... we were right... I don't know if you remember when we took about 500 people up right outside their door, and I think they probably were fearful that was going to happen. That's as close as anybody's got to her door, by the way.
Cecil Roberts, President, United Mine Workers Union, presenting a way forward today. Cecil, always good to talk to you, and thanks for...
I'll tell you what, I'll go in the morning if you'll go with me.
I know. Well, maybe I might on that one. You know, I might take you up on that.
You know what? You should give that some thought. Now, I'll just be the guy that was with Hoppy, but yeah, I can take a back seat.
All right,
Some
Cecil.
old guy with Hoppy, yeah.
Yeah, right. Who's those two old guys? Hey, man, good talking to you. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Hop.
All right, Cecil Roberts, President UMWA. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
The West Virginia Mountaineers return to action Thursday night, October 29th in Texas. Join the MetroNews Game Day crew as they cover WVU's primetime matchup with the TCU Horned Frogs. Pre-game coverage starts at 4:30 with the Cheap Gold and Blue Countdown, followed by the Sports Brunch. Game line kicks off at 7:30. At 10:30, post-game analysis begins on the Gold and Blue Wrap-Up, presented by the West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association, followed by the Point After. Don't miss game day coverage at its best here on Metro News.
Beckley, West Virginia is in the top 10. Unfortunately, it's in the top 10 for identity theft. When someone steals your identity, they're not only able to open accounts or credit cards to go on a spending spree, they can also write bad checks, establish utilities, even file for bankruptcy in your name. Hamilton, Burgess, Young & Pollard know identity theft, and they're ready to help you fight to clear your name. With offices in Princeton and Fayetteville, Hamilton, Burgess, Young & Pollard online at hamiltonburgess.com.
You're listening to Talkline on Metro News. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
When we made the Jeep Cherokee, we didn't stop at a stunning interior, or at advanced technologies, or stop at that gas station, or from going over bumps, or rocks, or through rivers. Let's just say we couldn't stop ourselves. One drive and you'll discover why the Jeep brand continues to be the best-selling SUV brand. Join us now during the Jeep Drive and Discover event.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
Almost there. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
It's a lot easier when you have it on before you get pulled over. Click it or ticket.
Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank, member FDIC. The Obama administration believes school kids are taking too many tests in the public schools. John Decker, Fox News Radio, following the story. John, good morning. What's the president saying and why?
Well, good morning to you. The president met yesterday in the Oval Office with educators, teachers from around the country, and he really wanted to tell them that he supports the idea of less standardized testing in public schools across the country. And to that end, the Department of Education will introduce some guidelines for school districts all across the country in January. And keep in mind, they're just guidelines. They're not rules, requirements. They're not mandates. But it's something that the president would like to see Congress follow through with in terms of legislation. And so that would happen if it happened in the new year.
John, I can imagine teachers and educators everywhere are saying, oh boy, new standards and guidelines. I mean, every time they open the mail, They got something different they have to consider. And the testing thing, I don't want to put you on the spot. The testing is controversial because there are a lot of people say, oh, it's too much testing. Others say, well, how do we know how we're doing, and how do we have benchmarks and then judge and then compare to that if we don't test? So the testing thing's a mess right now, quite frankly.
Well, it is, but interestingly enough, there's some bipartisan support with this idea that the president's putting forward, bipartisan on the left from the unions that support this idea. They believe that there's a lot of pressure on teachers to essentially teach to the test, and also from conservatives who believe that government shouldn't be involved in so much standardized testing, especially at the federal level. So because of that bipartisan support, there's some hope. The White House feels that there could be some bipartisan legislation that is pushed through that follows through with essentially a replacement for the No Child Left Behind Act, which was passed by Congress, signed by the president during the administration of George W. Bush back in the 2000s.
John Decker, Fox News Radio, on the president and testing. Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, man. According to the story I read, an average student will take an average of 112 tests between pre-K and grade 12. That's 20 to 25 hours of testing a year. Well, okay. Okay. What kind of test do you take in pre-K? What kind of kindergarten test is there? This is the coloring test. Back to what Cecil Roberts said. I got some emails, texts, and tweets on that. Email, Hoppy, finally, says Ronald, you have someone on your show discussing where the ultimate implications of the EPA coal issues lie, and that's with the power companies. Although they are being leaned on heavily by various regulations, they are making the decisions now that will affect the steam coal industry for the future. What do you think of Cecil Roberts' proposition? Well, I've been thinking about it since I saw a copy of the speech yesterday. I think a couple things. One is that at least there are people who are saying, maybe we could do this. Okay. And it's not just, quote, diversify the economy. It's here's a specific proposal for something that you might be able to do. A. B, carbon sequestration doesn't work yet. I mean, not in a commercially viable way. That's a problem. And again, I'm not trying to throw cold water on it. I'm just pointing out issues with it. Carbon sequestration is not yet commercially viable. That's a problem. C, or 3, that you wonder whether public-private could be successful where private is not successful or not going that route, i.e. the utilities. And also, you're talking about a tremendous debt by the state if you use the bonding authority to have these public-private ventures for these power plants. But it's an idea, and that's fine. I got another idea. Somebody gave me another idea the other day I want to talk about, which is a little bit out there, but it's an idea. Well, I don't have time to develop it right now. But it's still just hard for me to get past that what the EPA is doing on the carbon rules is blatantly aimed at the coal industry and probably illegal. Probably illegal. We'll take a break and be back. This is Talkline on Metro News. Metro News is the voice of West Virginia. It's 11:30. Let's get a news update. Check in with the Metro News Radio Network. Let's find out what's happening statewide this hour all across the great state of West Virginia.
West Virginia Metro News, I'm Chris Lawrence. Slow going for those trying to pass through Huntington this hour. Traffic's been detoured off I-64 westbound since early this morning after a tractor-trailer accident. The wreck happened in the westbound lanes between the Hal Greer Boulevard and 5th Street exits about 6:30 this morning. Crews have spent much of the morning cleaning up the mess. Traffic was backed up for miles, and the highway should reopen just after noon. More testimony today in Charleston Federal Court from the man who formerly ran the Upper Big Branch mine at Montcoal. Chris Blanchard continues to maintain there was no set procedure in place or even an indication that safety violations at Massey were acceptable to company management. Blanchard's going through a large binder that contains all of the safety citations written at UBB.
After each of these, defense attorney Bill Taylor is asking the same question. Was this the result of a conspiracy between you and Mr. Blankenship to willfully violate mine safety regulations? his answer is always, no, sir.
That's Shauna Johnson covering the trial. Read more about the Blankenship case at our website, wvmetronews.com. At the Public Service Commission, the president of West Virginia American Water Company is offering testimony this hour to back up his company's request to increase its rates by 28%. Jeff McIntyre told the panel early that West Virginia American has disruptions in service, but no more than any other similar-sized provider.
We have infrastructure issues not unlike any utility in North America.
The company wants the increase and plans to use the revenue to defray the cost of infrastructure improvements which have already been built. You're listening to Metro News. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
Identity theft, the fraudulent possession and use of a person's private identifying information, typically for financial gain. You never think identity theft will impact you until it does. But you can help protect yourself. The West Virginia Attorney General's office suggests you check your credit score often, create strong passwords, and change them frequently. Monitor your bank accounts and credit card statements, shred personal documents, install security software on your computer and phone, and avoid public Wi-Fi connections. For more information on identity theft, visit wvago.gov.
It's getting harder to make ends meet, and when you can't keep food on the table, it's pretty devastating. There is assistance, but applications can be confusing. Catholic Charities West Virginia is making it easier by helping families learn about and enroll in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, so they can get the healthy foods they need. Call 844-292-3217 to learn more, because if one person is going hungry, that's one too many. Catholic Charities West Virginia is an equal opportunity employer and service provider, funded in part by USDA and the Walmart Foundation.
Mingo Central High School was placed in a brief lockdown this morning. Authorities say the status was prompted when a student reported that another student claimed to have a gun in his shoe. Police got involved and say the claim was not true, but the student who made the remark is facing disciplinary action. Students are back in their class as well at Dunbar Middle School in Kanawha County, which was also put on precautionary lockdown this morning when somebody school officials didn't know walked in. The man told office staff he wanted to sing Justin Bieber songs to students over the PA system. From the Metro News Anchor Desk, I'm Chris Lawrence.
Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank member, FDIC. Text and tweets on what Cecil had to say. Text says, Hoppy, Cecil's out of touch. The EPA keeps moving the bar. There's no way it could easily satisfy Democratic presidents in 40 years. So will the UMWA support a Republican president to ensure a conservative court in favor of coal? Not to inject politics into this. However, understand what I think are two fundamental principles here in this whole argument. That, and I appreciate the fact when Cecil says or anybody says that maybe there's a way forward where we could do something to meet the EPA standards and still use coal. But the problem is, I'm convinced that the Environmental Protection Agency is really, under the current administration, and Gina McCarthy and whoever else would follow her in a Democratic administration, has absolutely no interest in any sort of plan that would utilize coal. That's not the point. The point is not to figure out a way that we can save in the coal industry or protect it and still use coal. That's not the point. That may be what well-intentioned people in West Virginia or coal country think. Their point is to stop the use of coal through tightening up the permitting process, through the MATS rules, through the carbon rules. That's the whole point. The whole point is to stop the use of coal. So it wouldn't matter, I don't think, to this EPA if you came back and go, look what we found. Here's this magic element, and we can use this to burn coal. They go, well, yeah, there's a problem with that because really coal sucks, and we got to find so I don't think it would matter what was done. I agree with the texter that the EPA would keep moving the bar, which means, and again, not to make this a politically partisan point, but which means until you have an administration, Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever, until you have an administration that is willing to call off the EPA dogs, you're going to continue to have this fight. Politics in West Virginia. Chris Stansberry is a member of the House of Delegates in Charleston in Kanawha County. Just been in there one term. and he's a Republican who has now announced he's running for the state Senate in West Virginia 17, and he may have a race on his hands because Corey Palumbo, popular Democrat from Charleston, is in that seat now, and as far as I've heard, Corey Palumbo plans on running for re-election. But let's find out what Stansberry's deal is. He joins us on Metro News Talkline. Chris, good morning. Good to talk to you again. And why are you running for the state Senate in West Virginia 17 in Kanawha County?
Good morning, Hoppy. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. Thanks for coming on.
Well, I'm running for a lot of the same reasons what drove me to run for the House in 2014. As a doctor, one of the things that I face every day is the health of my patients that's in gradual decline, and the frustration by myself and so many others who fight with the insurance companies, just trying to provide adequate treatment to our patients. Also, as a business owner, I want to work to make West Virginia more conducive to starting and growing a business. You know, we fight all the time with local and state regulatory agencies, and it's sometimes a hindrance to the growth of our business. And, you know, one of my big issues during the 2014 or 2015 session was addiction treatment. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that has been such a scourge on West Virginia, and one of the things that really drove me to run in 2014. And I want to continue my work there. And I feel that a seat in the Senate will enable me to better represent the citizens of Kanawha County, to represent a larger portion of my fellow Kanawha County residents, and give me a better opportunity to help set some of the legislative action and tone in the legislature and move things forward along at a better pace.
Chris Stansberry is with us. He's a Republican candidate for West Virginia State Senate, District 17, Kanawha County. You made the medical reference. You are an optometrist, a small business owner. So you talked about the addiction issue, and we've been talking about that a lot lately. What can or should government do to deal with the addiction issue? You see it all the time there in Kanawha County. What more should we do?
Well, I think it's multifaceted. I think we have to look at education, and we have to begin to educate our young people at a much younger age. You know, typically we start working in middle school and high school, talking to them about the dangers of drugs, but unfortunately kids are getting involved with drugs at a much younger age these days, and we can't discount how important it is that we educate our citizens and our young people on the dangers of addiction. I read a statistic recently that said that 3% of high school students now have admitted to trying heroin. And so back in my day in high school, you know, heroin was something that was talked about in the history books, not necessarily in the mainstream. So these things are becoming more and more prevalent throughout the school system. We have to do a better job of educating our young people. We also have to make sure that when people realize that they have a problem and they want to seek treatment, that there's treatment available. We haven't done a good job in keeping pace with the requirements and the needs in West Virginia, and so we're woefully undersupplied as far as treatment facilities go. We just don't have enough beds out there to deal with the demand. So as a state, we have to look at the underserved areas and make sure that as a legislative body, if there are certain funds that can be taken from certain places and put into others, that we can direct that towards the creation of treatment centers or going after federal dollars that may be available to help build those new treatment centers and provide better for our citizens.
Chris, what kind of Republican are you? Are you a Tea Party Republican? Are you a religious conservative Republican? Are you a Freedom Caucus Republican? Are you a country club Republican? Are you a business-friendly Republican? What kind are you?
Well, I try not to put labels on myself. I do tend to be a conservative socially and conservative fiscally. I don't try to align myself with any one particular segment of the Republican Party. I don't necessarily believe that is useful or helpful in all circumstances. And I think that, you know, the most important thing is that I am in touch with the needs of my constituents and to make sure that I can adequately represent them in the legislature. And I feel like, you know, if we put labels on ourselves and you start to segment people out of that, and I don't believe that that's constructive.
Chris Stansberry is with us, and he is announced he's running for the Republican nomination for the West Virginia State Senate, District 17, Kanawha County. That seat's been held for a couple of terms by Corey Palumbo, Democrat in Kanawha County. That's a handful. Palumbo's pretty popular there. What are your thoughts about a potential matchup with Corey Palumbo?
Well, Corey is popular. He's been there for a couple of terms, and people seem to like him. And he's been in the legislature overall for, I think, 14 years. So it's not going to be an insurmountable challenge, but it'll certainly be a challenge. Corey, I think, is a nice guy. Known him socially for a number of years, and don't have any type of ill feelings towards him, and would certainly like the opportunity to run a clean campaign and talk about things that we're capable of and the high points rather than stooping to negative campaign tactics.
All right, Chris Stansbury, Republican candidate for the West Virginia State Senate, District 17, Kanawha County. Chris, good to talk to you. We will watch that race with interest. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, Hoppy. Take
All right,
care.
man. Take care. Another race to watch in 2016. Email from Bruce. Hoppy, how do you think that he, Cecil, is going to guarantee investors that whatever they build will meet current regs, let alone future regs? It very, there's so many hurdles there. But again, I hate to be that guy that says, well, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't. Admittedly, there are many, many, many challenges to that proposal. But he's at least trying to propose something. But let me get back to this other point that, and follow me here, because this was suggested to me. I met with somebody last week, and somebody who I respect, who is in the business community, and they pitched me an idea, and I thought, okay, I'm going to talk about that. I'll talk about it right now. And that is this, and it's a little bit antithetical to the direction I normally come from, is that if the Obama administration really wants to help the devastated communities, let's say that the administration truly is concerned about coal communities that are being devastated by the regulations and the market and the other things to the market condition, but they're devastated communities, and that the administration is truly wants to help southern West Virginia or parts of West Virginia that have been devastated, that are being devastated by economic and regulatory conditions. What can they do? Well, we have a job training. Stop. We've had so many job training programs. Well, we're going to have a community development program. Stop. I mean, it's just the same government stuff that you hear all the time, and we really are not that interested in a couple $1 million for a job training program, so or to build a sidewalk in the community, that kind of stuff. That's not going to get it. Here's what the government could do. And this was as told to me. Move a Defense Department, relocate or establish a Defense Department installation or installations in southern West Virginia that utilizes private contractors. Say what? Yeah, for example, you want a government solution here? Here's one. Think of the FBI center in Clarksburg. Now, that Senator Byrd just said, okay, put the FBI center there. And they did it because they needed a new center, and Byrd says, you can get the money, put it there. And what you have is not only the FBI center, but you have a bunch of contractors, a bunch of private sector contractors who do a lot of business with the United States government. The United States government is a gigantic employer. Okay, so if we just want to forget about the whole free market thing for a minute, say, okay, then the Obama administration could put a couple of Defense Department installations in southern West Virginia, put one in Beckley, put one in Boone County, that utilizes private sector contractors. And the private sector contractors will follow. They have to, because that's where the jobs are. And you say, wait a minute, you're just creating government work. Well, not exactly, because the Defense Department has got to be somewhere. The federal government is gigantic. So offices of the federal government have to be somewhere. So if they're going to be somewhere, you could say, under the Byrd rule, put a couple of them in southern West Virginia. Make sure you put government installations there that require private contractors. So the private contractors are bidding for the work. Let them bid for the work and establish offices in West Virginia. If the government, well, now the best thing would be to get your foot off the throat of the coal industry through the EPA. But if you're not going to do that, and you're just pitching these crappy job retraining programs, forget that. If you really want to do something, then put a couple of large federal government installations in southern West Virginia that require private contractors. That would help. If you want a government solution or a government aid, that's the best way. You could provide government aid to southern West Virginia is by locating or relocating portions of the federal government there that require private contractors to do the work or keep them operating or whatever. There, people always say, Hoppy, you never think that there is government help. If you want government help, there it is. We'll be back.
Hi, it's Tony Caridi. If you're in a business or organization that needs visual help, then let's get together and talk. For more than a decade now, those of us at Pikewood Creative have embraced the opportunity to help people just like you tell their story visually. Whether it's a video, commercial, animation, or motion graphics piece, we produce content that make others take notice. We help people increase their business and organizations better tell their story. If you need help, then contact us at pikewoodcreative.com.
Every year, the Museum of Radio and Technology in Huntington adds more people to its Broadcasters Hall of Fame. The voices you grew up with, the faces you know, and the men and women behind the scenes are all represented in the Hall of Fame. And this Saturday at 6 p.m., the MetroNews Radio Network presents the 2015 Broadcast Hall of Fame ceremony live from the Radio Museum. Listen along with us as we honor the people who bring you radio and TV in West Virginia. Halloween night at 6 p.m. Join us.
This is Talkline on Metro News. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
When we made the Jeep Cherokee, we didn't stop at a stunning interior, or at advanced technologies, or stop at that gas station, or from going over bumps, or rocks, or through rivers. Let's just say we couldn't stop ourselves. One drive and you'll discover why the Jeep brand continues to be the best-selling SUV brand. Join us now during the Jeep Drive and Discover event.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
Almost there. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
It's a lot easier when you have it on before you get pulled over. Click it or ticket.
And the Ad Council.
Here in West Virginia, there are 2 great jackpot games you can play from the West Virginia Lottery. Powerball has drawings on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Mega Millions has drawings on Tuesdays and Fridays. The Powerball jackpot is $110 million. The Mega Millions jackpot is $117 million. Please play responsibly. I wrote today about the untenable situation with the Fayette County schools and the fact that you have schools there that are crumbling and falling down, the fact that Dr. Martirano, the state superintendent of schools, said on this program yesterday he's been to 46 of the state's 55 counties in just a little over a year. He's been to over 200 schools, and he says the schools, some of the schools in Fayette County, are among the worst that he's seen. He described the conditions in Fayette County at some of those schools as deplorable. Jeff Kessler, Democratic state senator, candidate for governor in West Virginia, also said the conditions are deplorable at some of those schools in Fayette County. So what is the way forward there? Speaking of the way forward, well, they've rejected bond issue after bond issue. The most recent one last June rejected out of hand 62% of those rejected a $39 million school bond issue. Then the state has had control of Fayette County schools for 4 to 5 years. And most recently, because they knew they couldn't get another bond issue passed, the board there the superintendent working with the State Board of Education came up with a plan and said, okay, Fayette County will come up with some money and it'll go to the School Building Authority, which allocates money for construction projects in the state. They'll go to the SBA for money. And the SBA rejected that proposal outright. And I talked to one of the members of the SBA this morning, and they said two things. One is that, again, there were concerns about the plan that was put forth because of the long bus rides of the kids who were in Meadow Bridge who are going to go to the new consolidated high school. And also that if you gave money, if the School Building Authority, the argument went that if you gave money, if the state gave money to Fayette County and they didn't pass a bond issue, then the other 54 counties would be saying, well, why do we have to pass a bond issue before we get money from the SBA? So here we are. And my point was, and people are asking me, well, I don't have a solution. I don't have a solution. And it's been suggested that the kids at Meadow Bridge, they should go to Greenbrier West. I don't know. I'm not there. It would be impertinent for me to suggest what they should do, except that I continue to talk about it just to draw attention to it, that we at least need to acknowledge that the conditions of some of those schools in Fayette County, those conditions are unacceptable. It's really unacceptable that kids in 2015 and staff and teachers would work in those conditions. So the adults in the room, the members of the community, school board, superintendent, State Board of Education, state superintendent, school building authority, they got to get together and figure something out for those kids. What is it? Well, that's here's some of the comments I've gotten this morning. Doug says, Hoppy, am I missing something? If the voters of Fayette County have no interest in paying their share of the expense to improve their schools, why should the citizens of all other counties care? That's a valid point. The only nuanced part of that is that, remember, when the way the school aid formula works, more or less, is that we all pay our property taxes and all the money goes essentially to Charleston, then it's redistributed based on a formula. So there is some subsidy that's going on. I mean, some counties are subsidizing other counties already to a degree with the way the school aid formula works. Bert says the levies and bonds are never enough. Every election cycle, we are bombarded with the cries for more school levies and bonds on top of the ones already in place. All the while, no effort is put into keeping the top-heavy school board under scrutiny from overstaffing and the waste that could and should be put into school buildings and teacher pay. Susan says, it seems to me that if the county residents refuse to support a levy to fix the problems with their schools, then they bear the major responsibility for the deplorable conditions of those schools. Some of the reaction today to the commentary today about the situation in Fayette County. Quick break. We'll be back. Stay with us.
Thursday nights on Metro News, it's Mountain East Conference football. This Thursday, the West Virginia Wesleyan Bobcats visit the University of Charleston Golden Eagles, and Metro News brings you all the action. Join Travis Jones and special guest Carl Lee for the call of the game starting at 7 p.m. Don't miss Division II football at its best as the Golden Eagles take on the Bobcats on Mountain East Conference Thursday night football from Metro News and WVMetroNews.com.
The Jeep Celebration event at Northside in Summersville is underway. Never a better selection. Over 200 Jeeps available. The 2015s are leaving quick. The 2016s coming in just as quick. This is a great opportunity for you to save big. Get a 2016 Jeep Cherokee Sport with the Sport Package and Cold Weather Group. Save over $3,000. It was $2,825, now $24,990. Here at Northside Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram Truck. Visit us online at northsidewv.com. Don't delay. Buy a Jeep today.
There are things that make our lives easier. You know, locking shoelaces, pizza scissors, remote control mops, one-hand bottle cap openers, and the Know Before You Go driving app. It's free travel information on West Virginia highways, traffic congestion, work zones, road conditions, information that can make your travel easier. Log on to WV511.org or download the WV511 Drive Safe app. Know Before You Go. It'll make your life easier.
You're listening to Talkline on Metro News. For 30 years, the voice of West Virginia.
When we made the Jeep Cherokee, We didn't stop at a stunning interior, or at advanced technologies, or stop at that gas station, or from going over bumps, or rocks, or through rivers. Let's just say we couldn't stop ourselves. One drive and you'll discover why the Jeep brand continues to be the best-selling SUV brand. Join us now during the Jeep Drive and Discover event.
At MVB Bank, we have one simple objective: to give you the very best of everything you could possibly want and need in a bank. That's it. We believe most people just want a really great bank with top-notch products like checking with cash back, nationwide ATM fee refunds, great CD and car loan rates, and more. Together with our awesome team and the convenience of state-of-the-art technology they can count on. It's no extra fluff, just good, honest banking. We're MVB Bank, your most valuable bank. Member FDIC.
Almost there. Just 5 more minutes. Almost home.
Statistics show that 80% of auto fatalities occur close to home on rural roads.
Cops.
That's why law enforcement is stepping up rural patrols and cracking down on impaired driving. If you are over the limit, you are under arrest because drinking and driving don't mix. Remember, over the limit, under arrest. This message brought to you by the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
It's a lot easier when you have it on before you get pulled over. Click it or ticket.
Talkline presented by MVB Bank, your most valuable bank, member FDIC. To get your fall foliage guide, call 1-800-CALL-WVA or stop by 90 McCorkle Avenue Southwest in South Charleston, or just go to one of the welcome centers, and they got them there. The Fall Foliage Guide from the state of West Virginia. Also, take your fall foliage pictures because time is running out. Post them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram using the hashtag #GoToWV, hashtag fall in WV. Hashtag go to WV, hashtag fall in WV. Chris says, Hoppy, I'm not disagreeing with your government building idea, but do you know the majority of jobs at the Clarksburg FBI Center are federal employees? It has about 2,500 federal employees and about 800 private contractors. Don't misunderstand me on this. I believe strongly that the private sector is the ultimate creator of jobs. And without private sector jobs, you have no government jobs. So I believe strongly in the private sector. All I'm saying is that if the Obama administration is in fact serious, if it's seriously concerned about the plight of people in the coal fields, they can do one or two things that would have some value, and that is take your foot off our throat, which is not going to happen, or move one or two large defense installations there that utilize private contractors. And keep your job training program. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Joe Nelson. And thank you to Matt Sunday. I'm Hoppy Kercheval, Talkline on MetroNews, the voice of West Virginia.